Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We've had such great guests earlier here. I've got a lot of great information that I think a lot of us can use as we go forward with our nonprofits here. This session is going to be talking about the legislative relationship, the government funding and relationship with our government agencies. We've also included a representative from the nonprofit sector in Anthony here with the Blue Ridge Hospice. So the following questions that we're going to be putting forth to our panelists will cover the topic of how our legislative offices work together with the nonprofit sector locally, and will also be answered from the point of view of both sides, both the nonprofit side and the legislative side. The panelists will be asked 5 questions, and then we'll ask the audience to submit questions after we're done with those 5 questions. And I think we'll be using hopefully the Q&A box here that we can put those questions in afterwards here. So let me go ahead and start out here from the list of bios that I have here. First one I have is Phan. And if I'm mispronouncing that, if you want to use AP, is that sufficient? Okay. AP is the Northern Virginia Outreach Representative for U.S. Senator Mark Warner and has been serving Virginians in this position for over 7 years. Previously, she was at Women's Research and Education Institute Fellow in the office of Congresswoman Lucille Roybal-Allard of California, and she holds a BA in Government and International Politics with a minor in Urban Studies from George Mason University and an MPA from Baruch College, New York, and is originally from Portland, Oregon, and she lives in Alexandria, Virginia here. So thank you, welcome on board here. Thank you. Our next panelist is Rachel Reibach, and Rachel is Senator Tim Kaine's Regional Director for Northwestern Virginia. She represents the senator in 9 counties across Northern Virginia and the Northern Shenandoah Valley. This means connecting with state and local elected officials, nonprofits, educational institutions, healthcare providers, businesses, economic development, advocacy groups, and other organizations. She is then responsible for planning Senator Kaine's meetings and tours with these groups when the Senate is in recess. When she's in the office, she assists Senator Kaine with constituent casework for Homeland Security, education, and immigration. Rachel's love of Virginia began in the Shenandoah Valley, where she attended Washington and Lee University in Lexington. So welcome aboard, Rachel. Next one is Delegate Bill Wiley. Bill Wiley was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates in 2020. He represents the 29th district, which includes the city of Winchester and parts of Frederick and Warren counties. Bill currently serves on the Education and the Communications, Technology, and Innovation committees. Before his election to the House of Delegates, Bill spent 6 years on the Winchester City Council, serving first as vice chairman and then as chairman in 2018. Prior to that, Bill served for 5 years on the Winchester Planning Commission, including 3 years as chairman. Bill has a BS in economics and a master's in education from George Mason University. From 1990 to 1998, he proudly served his country in the Virginia Army National Guards. Professionally, Bill is the business development manager for Howard Shockey and Sons and is an associate real estate broker at Oak Crest Commercial Real Estate. He, his wife, and 3 sons reside in Winchester. Thank you very much for being on board here, Bill.
Thank you, Richard.
And next, we have Anthony Croson. Anthony Croson is the Chief Business Development Officer for Blue Ridge Hospice. He returned to Blue Ridge Hospice in June of 2020 after he was with Blue Ridge from 2007 through 2018 as Senior Director of Business Development. In that period from 2018 to 2020, Anthony was the President and CEO for Home Instead Senior Care at Home Instead, one of the leading home care companies in the Northern Shenandoah Valley and Panhandle of West Virginia. He provided leadership in a collaborative, professional, and mature environment to over 300 caregivers and 36 office professionals. During his tenure with Blue Ridge Hospice, Anthony was credited with the establishment of the Blue Ridge Hospice Business Development Council, which increased awareness in the community and ideas for revenue generation for the organization through a council of local leaders. Anthony is no stranger to the area, as he was born and raised in Winchester, which has allowed him to make invaluable contacts within our region. So welcome aboard, all of you. And
thank you.
We'll go ahead and get started here with our questions. And what I will do here is I think it's best to go ahead and I will identify the question, then we'll have, in the order that I introduced you, we'll use that same order to answer the questions, okay? So the first question that we have in front of our panelists is, how would you recommend nonprofits get involved with advocating on behalf of their organizations with elected officials such as yourselves? And we'll go ahead and start with AP.
Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate the introduction and being here. I have also had the pleasure of being on both sides of the advocacy table. I've both organized lobby days on behalf of causes and nonprofits that I was affiliated with, as well as listening from the other side on behalf of the member or elected official. So what I can say is, the first thing is, you can't be shy about these things. Be bold, take the initiative to be a part of the cause that you're championing, and select people who are, first of all, constituents. That's probably the most important thing. Select people who are constituents, who have a testimony or a story that nobody else can represent except for them, and make it unique, make it brief, make it compelling, and have a very clear ask at the end. And of course, a dash of politeness never hurts, because, you know, we're all kind of just doing our jobs here, and you'd be amazed at how much a little sweetness goes a really long way. Even if you're asking for something challenging or difficult, it's always better to do it, dare I say, politely than not. But that's my first thing: constituents, compelling, brief, and polite.
Okay, thank you very much, AP. And one thing I do want to mention, that if we go through the round of the four of you and you guys, oh, I forgot something or want to bring in something, please just speak right up and we'll be able to add that back into the conversation on that particular question. So, okay, thank you. Rachel.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay. Well, thank you, Richard. And I mean, AP and I both work for amazing senators, so agree with everything she said. But just to add, AP and my job is to be out in the community, learning about it, because the senators are stuck to the Hill so much. But when they come out, they rely on us on who to meet, what to see. So yeah, stay in contact with us, email us, invite us, the representatives, to come and see your organization, like a building, or just meet with your leaders. And so we'll send all that back to our bosses, or if he has free time, that's how he says, I want to have a roundtable with nonprofits. We'll remember you because we had that one-on-one experience with you. And I mean, we really rely on groups like you who are on the ground working on important issues. I mean, we have a opioid roundtable. We have to go into the big players in Winchester and have them tell us who the best people to be at the table is. So just staying in contact with us, and we'll tell you when we need you and we're ready to help you and get answers from you.
Okay, great. Next up, Bill. Before we start, I just want to say I've worked with Bill in the past with when I was with the chamber here, and I've known the work that Bill has done locally here. He's been a great leader with the local community here, so I appreciate the work and support that he's done locally, and now that he's at the state level, I'm looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish here together too. So, Bill, go right ahead.
Thanks, Richard. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you. And certainly enjoyed working with you in the past as well. And appreciate you guys taking or inviting me on this call. This is certainly an important conversation to be had. And, you know, these ladies have just mentioned certainly having a roundtable discussion periodically is very important to keep us in the loop. You know, communication is key to us, you know, in the political positions that we serve. So, you know, the old saying goes, if we don't hear anything about it, we just think everything's just fine. Granted, we might read in the newspaper, or we might hear from somebody every now and then, but until we really get somebody kind of rattling our cage, calling us, emailing us, whatever communication to let us know that, hey, this is what's going on. These are some of the things we really, you know, need to advocate for that need to be addressed. So we encourage you to, you know, at the very least, and we do this a lot with municipal groups, as well as, you know, other businesses and associations, is we meet with them prior to session. And I encourage you guys to do the same. Sit down for an hour or whatever time you need to kind of go over your priority list for the up and coming session for the state. Kind of a checklist, if you will, and then things that we can kind of try to find ways to help you for the betterment of the nonprofit programs throughout the area. So thank you for letting me be on here, Richard. Okay.
Thank you, Bill. Okay. Anthony is next. And of course, Anthony's position is from the nonprofit side. So he's going to give us a little perspective of what we can do from that side. And Anthony's been involved, like I said, as I read, in the community here for quite a long time. So I'm sure he's got a lot of good thoughts of where he can see it from the nonprofit side. So Anthony, go ahead and I'll let you talk here.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks for the invite. And it's a pleasure to be here today. And as everyone has kind of said earlier, it's you have to be involved. You have to be in the community. You have to be able to meet with your elected officials and be able to talk to them one-on-one, but also in group settings like this so that you can discuss what's going on. A couple years ago, I was able to meet with all the elected officials in our community, in our surrounding area, and pull in the community. I brought in the chamber. We brought in other nonprofits. We brought in home health and home care, and was able to pull in and talk about senior needs and things that were going on that we were seeing in homes and that other facilities and organizations were dealing with. And I found that to be very beneficial to bring to everyone's attention what seniors were going through and what aspects we might need to look at going forward. And how do you partner together in this community? This community is wonderful and supports each other so tremendously, but how do you continue to keep that community and camaraderie going? So I found that to be a very beneficial meeting that we had a few years back. And I think it would be a great asset to this community if we could do something like that again.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony. And like I said before, if there's any other things that maybe you thought you might want to mention, something like that, now's the time to go ahead and do that. But I will also chime in too, being involved in the local community here with the chamber and so forth. It's really, this community is very unique. It's really such a great giving community. And I really believe that there's a lot that can be done here in support of our nonprofit sector. So again, thank you very much. Okay, the next question gets down into a little bit more detail about, legislative type stuff and things here too. So let me go ahead and put forth the next question. Is there any proposed policy or legislation from your office relevant to nonprofits and you think could positively impact the nonprofit sector? And I'll go ahead and start with you, AP. We'll do this again here. So let's hear from you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And this is not me sounding smart. This is me leaning on my legislative counterparts back in DC for a better answer to this question. I'm more of a generalist. I can, talk forever about just about anything, but it's my colleagues in the DC office that really drill down deep into the legislative weeds, as it were. So I asked my legislative director what a suitable answer to this question would be, and she snapped back with the American Rescue Plan, and how in the American Rescue Plan, which I believe both of our bosses supported, Rachel, it has a lot of resources for nonprofits, both at the state and local level. It had the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, extended to organizations for social welfare in Section 8 or Section 501 social clubs that there were PPP. And then also the Employee Retention Tax Credit, the ERTC. The American Rescue Plan extended this enhanced version of the credit through the end of 2021, so taxpayers can claim the credit in the third and fourth quarters of the calendar year. And there's much more on that, but in general, it was the American Rescue Plan that passed in March of this year that is the last comprehensive COVID relief legislation that's going to pass. And it includes flexibility for those who invest in resources of nonprofits. And the ARP also supports other benefits for nonprofits through the PPP and ERTC, as I mentioned.
Okay, thanks, AP. And I just want, with the question here, we're just looking forward. What forward things do you see coming on here? So again, thanks very much. Rachel?
Once again, AP and my boss make a great team. So I agree with everything she said. When I asked my colleagues the best things to highlight for you today, it was a lot of the COVID relief big packages that have come out recently. The biggest thing was extending PPP and all those things to 501c6s. And it also taught me personally a lot about the legislative process, because when you think about how hard it is to pass a law, you might, if something's not working, if a policy is not working with your nonprofit or organization, it seems overwhelming to pass a whole new law to fix that. But with a lot of the COVID relief, we learned we could reach out to the administrators of those programs and say, could we tweak this a little bit to let this relief go to a different population? It's not working. So if it's overwhelming, like we'll never get a law passed for our little, just talk to our office. And sometimes we have those good relationships to say, let's expand the eligibility. We don't need a new law. So we're really, really proud of what we've accomplished during COVID. A lot of money going to state and localities that we really feel will pass to organizations like yours. I mean, like I said, you're the ones on the ground housing and you're the ones solving these. So really the best thing for us to do is let the money flow down to you so you can do that. And we feel like we've got to start on that. And we hope that continues with Build Back Better and more relief to come.
Okay, that brings me to just a little bit quick follow-up question here, and then we get on to Bill. But that's at the federal level. Are there things that still would impact the nonprofits going forward here from what has already passed? Is there still things to come in terms of we haven't finished up this one piece and we still have it left to follow up on? Is that what I'm hearing? I think on there too.
So I'll let AP go again as well, but
okay.
I'm not sure of full new things in the works, but I think there's a lot of, if we hear from you, something's not working, you're not seeing these huge unprecedented packages affecting your organizations, reach out to us and we'll see what we can tweak if there's a fix in there for these ongoing things, because they've passed, but they're still affecting.
Right.
If AP has anything else.
Yep. AP, if you have anything to add?
Yeah, there's a lot in the infrastructure bills. and it's vast. I mean, with thousands of pages, we've got, our entire team in the DC office, breaking it down into little chunks to, pour over and see exactly who's going to be benefiting from which pots of money that are going to get distributed. And also, sadly, whose causes are going to get like chopped in the compromises that inevitably are coming. Because I don't think this legislation is going to stay completely intact as it is right now. So it's right now a matter of contacting your senator's office to let them know that your issues and causes should, be preserved at all costs. Because we're only going to be listening to the people that reach out to us, that we hear from, because communication is key, as the delegate said. And if we don't hear from anyone, we're going to be thinking that, things are fine and unfortunately expendable. So please reach out to us, especially on this big spending bill.
Okay, Bill, I know from the state level, and particularly since you're from this area here, it'll be interesting to hear, what's at the state level that can really is going to come down from there to impact us here as the nonprofit sector. So I'm interested in hearing what you see from your place here.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. You can hear me? I keep checking to see if you can hear me. You can hear me.
Yep, you're just fine.
Thank you. So, right now we're dealing, with it, calling it the great reassessment, or in terms of what we're dealing with coming out of COVID, which is kind of this new frontier in terms of getting people back to work, and kind of a different dynamic in terms of how, the different workforce or opportunities for people to go out and get jobs, and trying to assist with people getting trained. And that's a big focus, I think, for us right now, is getting people trained, job enhancement programs, the staffing issues. Speaking of having a stay-at-home group here from Homestead, I have my mother in Roanoke. I had to move her to a facility because I couldn't get anybody to staff our house to take care of her. And if you look up and down the highway on 81, I think every billboard's filled with, industries are begging for people to come work. They're throwing out bonuses. They're doing everything to raise the hourly pay to be competitive, to get that next person to come work for their industry. And that's going to continue to change and actually get more challenging because of the e-commerce market, which is growing steadily in our neck of the woods, which leads me to the conversation that we have with Senator Kaine regarding the infrastructure bill. And it's good that you guys brought that up. I wish that was not tied to the other bill on the federal level, because fortunately Senator Kaine is wanting to put a lot of the monies towards I-81. Thank you very much. We hope that money does get earmarked, or at least most of it gets put to that highway system, because at the end of the day, that is our artery, our lifeblood for our neck of the woods. And with this e-commerce movement, we are having a tremendous influx with logistics distribution centers up and down our area, neck of the woods. And quite frankly, it's for two reasons. One, we're strategically located in the eastern seaboard for transportation needs. And second, we're still a right to work, the furthest northern right to work state on the eastern seaboard. So that in itself, we are having major developers from all over the country coming to our neck of the woods to build these facilities. Well, that's great. It offers job opportunities, but if we can't get these folks trained up, much less have people available to apply for the job, we're going to have a problem there. So I'm focused on trying to make sure that we have plenty of jobs, and those jobs get filled, and the people in our neck of the woods have competitive pays, and we can have that balance there. So I think that's a huge thing to help out with our area economically. And then the second part that it probably should be mentioned later, maybe I'll mention now, is the mental health issue. And there's going to be some policies that I'm going to be looking at to help out on that end, from the homeless side all the way up. We've been having major challenges from law enforcement to the hospitals to mental health facilities trying to get these people housed. I certainly appreciate the feds bringing money to the state and that getting allocated to that cause, but that is a major concern for us right now, and we're trying to help out with those people in need, to get them help that they need, so that they can not only a harm to themselves, but also keeping harm to other people. So I'll yield back. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Just to follow up with you is you know, as you know, this area has a lot of nonprofits, including, you know, just help for all phases of life in terms of healthcare and that sort of thing. Do you see any specific areas of nonprofit that may be impacted with some of this legislation coming forward down the road here?
Well, yeah, Northwest Community Service Board, certainly with the Winchester Rescue Mission, certainly with Habitat and the housing groups to try to get people homes. I know we have an affordable housing issue in our area. I think it's, you know, from that level all the way to getting people help, there's probably, I would say, probably 5 or 6 nonprofits that come to mind that certainly can play a role or at the table to talk about how we can solve some of these issues.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's good on there. Okay, Anthony, from the other side here, from the nonprofit side, what do you see anything coming down from the road that's from the legislative side that may impact this nonprofit sector? And particularly since you're from a much larger nonprofit, you know, you may be a little bit more involved a little bit than some of the other ones here, but what do you see coming down?
Well, we're very appreciative for what they did for PPP, you know, earlier in the year and was able to help us sustain and be able to not have to lay anyone off. You know, it is, everyone is struggling, as I hear Bill talk about the home care situation. It's hard to keep people right now and to get new people to sign on and be able to make them realize of what the opportunities are out there. So that is something that we're constantly working on, whether it's incentives or just making them realize whichever organization it is that they're trying to go to work for, the vast need that is there and what they can bring back to the community. So it's good to hear of some of those things that are happening. One of the things that we're very blessed with is that our chief clinical officer is on the Virginia Associates of Hospice and Palliative Care board. So she keeps us aware of anything that's coming down the pipeline or that's being looked at for end of life care or hospice care or any of those type of avenues. You know, we do as much as we can to support the community with our thrift shops and those type of things. I know we've partnered in the past with United Way. I think it was about 3 years ago when they were doing 10 homes for the homeless. And we did our best to make sure that they had furniture and clothing and household needs to get set back up. So, you know, I know we would still be involved in what Bill's trying to do in the community to make sure that people are getting housing, and those, especially we've been working with the Walk Out of the Darkness with Stephen City this past weekend, just being there for community and mental health, because we offer grief and loss support within the community, whether it's you've lost a loved one or whether you're just dealing with the aftermath of COVID and being alone and those type of things. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other feedback from anybody else on this particular question? Otherwise, we'll move on. So, okay. The next question here is, on the other hand, are there any existing policies that you would like to see the nonprofit sector support? So, AP, we'll start back with you on there.
Yeah, this is actually kind of a little more generic and easier to answer in that if you do a little research and figure out what my boss's legislative priorities are and see how well you can fit your agenda to align with that, that's going to create a synergy that is really productive and really helpful to further your cause, because you can tie it into exactly what he considers his legislative priorities, and you can figure that out mostly through his committee assignments. You know, he's chair of the Intelligence Committee. How does your nonprofit fit in with that? But there's also so many other committees that he's a part of. He's the co-chair of the, like, for example, the Alzheimer's Caucus. He is really very concerned personally with brain health in seniors because of his mother having Alzheimer's disease before she passed away a few years ago. There's all kinds of research that you can do into what the priorities are that you can align yourselves with, and that's probably the best way to figure out the most effective messaging you can do about your cause.
Okay, thank you. Rachel.
So just because Anthony brought up PPP again, and the question was about amending, I thought of a kind of good example of when we go back in and fix these things. I think it was the second PPP draw that we were hearing a lot from nonprofits, actually, that the revenue loss threshold wasn't matching up with your industry, because the basis nonprofit revenue loss might not be where you're hurting it, staying afloat, keeping your people around, keeping your services going. So I'm not really, I don't have any existing policies we want to amend. I'd say if there are more things like that you want to amend, let us know, because we're not on the ground to see when they're not working. We need to hear from you, and we'll try. And it's been successful at times.
Okay. Bill, from the state level, are there existing policies that you like? What would you like to see the nonprofits support, from your viewpoint there?
Well, I mean, from the last and special session we had from the federal money that was coming our way, there were some nonprofits that reached out asking for monies, and unfortunately the timing of that wasn't applicable. And so I would stress to say, hey, I think in line with, with that conversation about helping them out with the operational piece, because I know they've been impacted from COVID, is to try to see if we can find a way to help them on our next budget session. In line with that issue, I think it'd be a good time to circle back around to see how we can help with a lot of these programs that have been successful, but unfortunately have been impacted from COVID. And then the other thing I want to say is that, it's always a challenge with nonprofits in our area is they all do great things, but it's a matter of trying to find ways, and I don't know how you would certainly amend this, but it's more of kind of just trying to find ways for them to work together. And I know a lot of them do, but it's to work together and have accountability without having too much overlap or doubling up on services that is kind of overkill, if you will. I think there's areas that we can have nonprofits kind of work together to fill the gaps that aren't serviced, but at the same time, find the services that are needed. And so we make sure that all the services are being attended to, and there's no gaps. I hope you follow me on that, but there's issues that we have in the community, kind of going back to the mental health side, we have gaps, and I'm just trying to find ways that we can get some of these nonprofits to try to fill those gaps and to kind of work together and partner. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great idea there, Bill, because I think communication, getting together, talking about it, I think, Rachel, you mentioned it before, about how, again, it's really how can we work better together in terms of that and make these things known. And I think, Bill, that's what you need we need to know about what this stuff is, and then we can match it up with what the priorities are that the state is going through and so forth at this point. So great point there, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony.
Currently, the ones that I spoke with Jennifer earlier about was, we're looking at making sure that we're getting support for end-of-life care, and that we're being able to continue to be able to offer grief and loss support services, which we've been fortunate enough to get funded through the United Way grants that we've been able to apply for also. But, I'm one that's truly on board with meeting with these other nonprofits and our delegates here in the community to figure out how do we fill those gaps. I mean, I'm a true believer in we have to pull together as a community and support one another in order to make it a better place for all of us. I think we all hear about these things that are going on, and we're all struggling of what is our next steps. And I had a phone call today that I overheard of a homeless man who needed help, and we were able to direct this person in the right way of what to do next and what we could do from our end to help out. So, I'm truly on board for whatever our next steps are after this to see what we can do together as a community.
Okay. I'll go ahead again, follow back up with the four of you. Any other last minute comments or anything else you'd want to put in on this question? Okay. Next question we have here now is, yeah, how do you do it? How can nonprofits help you in advocating before your office or legislature on behalf of the nonprofit sector? So tell the nonprofit sector what you want from them to be able to advocate effectively. So AP, I'll start with you.
I want nonprofits to be holding me accountable and the senator accountable all the time. If at the first, contact, you don't get the result that you want, if you keep on keeping on as persistently and politely as you can, eventually I think you will get heard. One example of this is, probably something that Rachel's, experienced as well, quite a lot of, and that is people who are advocating for different bits of legislation that might not have come together at first. The issue that I'm thinking of right away is gun violence prevention. And it took, volunteers and organizations from all over Virginia, converging and always constantly, I'm not saying battering us with the message, but just really persistently coming back to us with the consistent messaging, the very specific legislation or bits that they wanted to see done. And there are very compelling reasons why. They kept it, concise, they kept it compelling. They have all constituents, reach out to us, telling us where they lived in Virginia and why this mattered to them and their community. And eventually the message was heard. Boss went from, A+ rating in NRA to actually really considering and being a champion for a lot of the gun violence prevention legislation that's happened. So change does happen. It is not overnight, but you do need to kind of keep at it.
Okay, Rachel.
I would agree with AP again. I would just say, like I've said many times, keep in contact with us, bring us important data, your mission, your funding, what's federal grants, who we can help you connect with, invite us to things so that we can see your operation and it sticks in our head. Me and AP are going to events every day and we remember where we went and saw the things versus an email that gets pushed down. So inviting us out and keeping in touch with us, putting us on your email newsletter so that we see your name every so often. Just give us all the tools to remember you and advocate for you.
Let me ask also before we go any further here, what helps you from the legislative side understand and what makes an impact to you that a nonprofit does? Is it the data, the statistics? Is it the stories that come out of that? Is it, what moves you as a legislative office that makes you want to do more for that nonprofit?
I'd say start from the beginning, why your area was important to you, what issue you saw in your community, the ways you're trying to tackle it, what your end goal is, I guess the numbers of your successes, but I mean, just the story of it and the people you're helping. We've done a few roundtables just in my time with the Northern Shenandoah Valley Substance Abuse Coalition. I went to Project Connect and I meet all this, many of you probably were there, and just hear what you found, what change you wanted in your community and your steps and how we can help.
I was just curious what impacts you as the legislative office to do what you need to do. And AP, I don't know if you want to add any more to that or not, but
we don't need your report, just your story.
Leave behind the report, but when you're actually meeting with us as staff, have like just one or two of the most compelling, stories people, the constituents' stories, is the most powerful, impactful way that you can actually get your message across. How does this issue personally impact you and therefore us as Virginians and the rest of the country? Again, find out that unique story that nobody else can tell except for your advocates. That's the biggest thing. And then of course, follow up. Make our lives easier. We get your message up to the boss much easier.
Okay. Well, I know, and I'll jump to Bill here. I'm sure he's got, some really good stuff on that, but I just want to say that a number of organizations, and Anthony, you may talk about that a little bit, but Homestead offers, you have advocates, actual paid advocates out of each of the nonprofits that sometimes will do that, create that story, create the connection and so forth on here. So, okay, Bill, I'll let you talk a little bit about that here.
Yeah, thanks. And those are great points AP and Rachel said. I completely agree. I mean, as I mentioned before, it would be great if we could have, the nonprofits, I mean, ideally, get together and kind of figure out what their priorities are. And certainly we can't do them all in one session, but if there's a top 5 or a top 10 or whatever it may be that are pressing, if you could say, what are the most critical priority needs that we have right now? And I'm sure number one is funding, but the other things that we want to know is where else do you need assistance that we can help? I think, if we can get that communicated to us prior to going into session, it gives us a chance to work with our other fellow delegates and to try to find a way to craft bills and along with the Senate side so that, when we hit the ground running, when it comes to the floor session, we can get a bill pushed through pretty quick instead of having to say, it's got to get tabled because we got to check it out in appropriations, wait till next year and study it or whatever it may be. I think if we did a little homework up front and asked that the nonprofits huddle together and try to find ways to figure out what their priorities are and then come to us, I think we can be a little bit more successful with getting things resolved locally.
Bill, I just want a quick follow up. I know you're from obviously here locally and stuff. Do you yourself meet with the nonprofits on a maybe a regular basis or as needed basis or something like that to get more information about it?
I think it's as needed, Richard. Okay. It's not as, I'll give you an example. I meet with the city, and I meet with the county, and I meet with Warren County or Frederick County. I meet with them, and we sit down and we go over. They give me a sheet, and they go over, hey, this is what our board says that we need to tackle this year. We want you to tackle. And actually, I think we got a couple of the things accomplished this past session. And so that I think is probably the best way to do it. If we can just align the stars and try to find a way that we can all huddle together and just try to say, okay, guys, I'm going to meet you in November and let's spend, a couple hours or whatever it may be so we can go through these list of things that we need to do. And we just call it a standing time every year. We're going to get together before session kicks off. I think would be very important so that every year I know exactly what I got to do to meet with nonprofits. And when I leave there, I'm held accountable and I can report back, hey, this is what happened or this is what didn't happen. And at least there's a matrix or some type of, a weighted system to try to figure out what we got done, what we didn't get done.
Okay. I just saw a little chat note here from Kim Herbstritt that, as you know, she's on the city council here looking, I'm sure, Bill, you did the same thing, that there's, basically some advocacy groups and things that you can tie into and be able to learn, what's going on. So you've got the unique perspective being on the city council here and then being, at the state level. So that's
it
good.
Helps.
It helps.
It certainly helps. It certainly helps. But, as the ladies here from the federal side, we're in the same position.
Yep.
If you don't talk to us and we don't hear from you, and if we're not getting the high points or these unique stories or whatever it may be that we need to know, we're going to be focusing on the other 1,000 things that we're focusing on. So I can't stress that enough.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good note for us at the Nonprofit Alliance Group here is that, we can, as a resource, provide some of these advocacy contacts and so forth and be hopefully a mouthpiece for the legislators and make that connection with the nonprofits here too. So I think that's a very good benefit on there. Anthony, you've been on the other side. What do you see that had been effective in communicating?
Well, as you brought up earlier, when I was at home instead, they did have an advocate that was on our team for each division of each area of the organization or company that we worked for that helped go to legislative for us. And so it was good for that factor that we could meet with them quarterly and find out where we were at, what we needed to work on, and what other things were coming down the pipeline that we needed to support or get behind. But I like the point, and I was going to suggest that when you just brought up that this group here, could bring together some of the advocacies that are out there that maybe some of the other nonprofits don't know about. I think we're all going to have to do our due diligence and be able to look at each one of our representatives and see what their goals are and what they stand behind and decide where we fall as nonprofits and then collaborate together to see what we can do to get everything improved.
Yeah, right. And I think it seems to me like every legislative person is going to help the nonprofits one way or another. So there's, you just need to figure out, how do you do that type of a thing and get that message in front of the legislative people. So, okay. Any other follow-up or anything with this topic? Nope.
Probably,
okay.
I think a helpful tip also is to actually to manage expectations. When you advocate for your cause, you're not necessarily going to be meeting with the senator himself, but you will be meeting with his staff, who will be, the best messengers for your ideas to get to him. A lot of the scheduling requests that I get, ask for the senator specifically. And I hate to say it, but there's a reason why that message has trickled down to me, because I'm representing the senator. I'll be taking that meeting. And it'll have just as good of a chance to go up to the senator than not. Rachel, you want to chime in?
Just while we're on managing expectations, a lot of what my colleague said when I asked for information is that we can do a lot of things to help the nonprofit sector. We're not necessarily going to be able to get into the nitty-gritty of something to help. Like if there is a major problem with these policies that the funding is not getting to you, but we're not able to fund your nonprofits necessarily. So just in the we're taking this to DC that is representing 50 states and territories, but we care about Virginians, and we're going to get the right language that will hopefully help your area in Virginia, but managing the expectations of what we can do exactly for you.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the casework part of it. Because
that's a good point.
We have, the DC legislative side, which is why we're here talking, but throughout the state, there's like 5 others just like me who are doing nothing but outreach. And in every single one of our state offices, we've got caseworkers too. And caseworkers in this sense, because I know, Rachel, you do casework and I don't, but they're kind of like the shepherds that cut through a lot of bureaucracy. We work with federal agencies and only with the congressional liaison staff of those agencies. So we have a direct line. That is our value add to our constituents. And you as nonprofits are also our constituents here in Virginia. Do not hesitate to call on our caseworker staffs to work with their congressional liaisons in whatever federal agencies that you need assistance with. We're talking Social Security, we're talking disability, VA, Medicaid, Medicare, immigration, visas. If you've got refugees coming into your region and they need assistance, we can also connect you up with different agencies and different nonprofits who are doing the same thing. So there's more than just the legislative side.
Great.
There's the casework side as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other follow-up or anything we're done on there? So, okay. One more question, and this is not necessarily, it's maybe a little bit shorter. Let me just read it here. Are you aware of grant opportunities available through your office that our nonprofits may be interested in learning about, applying, and so forth here at this point? And again, I'm just throwing it out and just saying, hey, as you know, nonprofits always are looking for funding, and if there's some way, and I know that there's the AFP and some other things that we do for the funding side, but if through your office, is there anything else? AP?
Yes, we do. Although not in the Northern Virginia office where I'm at, we do things a little bit differently. All of our grant support is coming out of our Richmond office, and we routinely offer letters of support if you're going for a grant and you request that kind of support from us. We can't, of course, guarantee you the grant, but we will definitely try to help you get there and be very happy for you and congratulate you when you do get your grant and let you know, because a lot of those federal agencies let us know that you received it.
Well, this may be a good time. So if the three of you legislative people have the opportunity to provide us with your contact information, we would be able to get that here. So I see, Rachel, you've got yours out there, and AP, I'm sure you'll be good. And Bill, hopefully you can get your information out there too at some point, and we'll be happy to put that on our website and do that. So again, thank you for that. So Rachel, anything more to add to that?
No, I would just really push you to the link I just shared. I had that ready to share because that has links to where we see federal opportunities for you. It has how to submit your information for our grants person to kind of help you with the application and support letter if it's federal. So she was a grant writer. Her name's Gwen Mason. She's in our Roanoke office. She was a grant writer before she worked for us. So she can really be a resource for you through that process. And
good.
Through that page is how you'll access her and our info. Okay.
Thank you very much. Bill, what do we have on what we can do for them on the state side here?
Yeah, and certainly as a follow-up, I'll get you guys my contact information. Yeah, so the grant opportunities, that clearly is not something that I'm well versed in. I'll be the first to admit, but and I understand that a lot of nonprofits don't have the wherewithal to write the grant, right? To actually apply for it, because that takes somebody with some experience and expertise. And maybe that's an area that I know I'm kind of Monday morning quarterbacking this thing, but I talk a lot with municipalities in our areas about, if we can't afford this, and all these small municipalities or the towns are having affected issues with it, why couldn't we find one person to do it that everybody kind of chips in to pay for it? And that's a thought with, kind of having somebody to help out with all these nonprofits that might not have the horsepower to have an in-house grant writer. And certainly what's available out there, I would defer back to my federal counterparts here and whoever else in the state level that we can help out agency-wise. But I think that there's ways, because I think that that's kind of the biggest hurdle a lot with these nonprofits is that, gee, we see the grant, but we don't know how to apply for it because we've never, we don't understand how to write it, much less the language and how to input the information. So I think that's more of trying to get somebody in that position to help them apply. Not only, that a grant might be available, but they don't have the ability to write it. If I may, to articulate the language in there to sell the grant for that applicable nonprofit, if that makes sense.
Right, definitely.
And so I would try to find ways with these nonprofits to try to help them, try to find ways that they can get somebody to help them write for grants to win them that money.
Bill, I don't know if you're aware of the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission. And
Yes.
they actually have assisted. In fact, thank you, Cynthia Schneider. She's mentioned that to me here, and I've been aware of them, but they are also another group that will help in that process too. So again,
I'll give you a good example, if I may, Richard.
Sure, right ahead.
So Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission. So you guys have heard of the MS4 folks that, so if somebody wants to disturb more than 2 acres of dirt to build a home or to do a commercial development or build a commercial building or whatever it may be, they have to get it reviewed by the DEQ in the state, which is, of course, administered to the Fed. So,
right.
Well, they have in-house reviewers in Winchester, Frederick County. They don't have them in Shenandoah County. They don't have them in Front Royal, the town of, and they don't have them in Page. They don't have them in Clark. So what happens is, or Berryville. So what happens is, if you're in one of those locations and you apply for this, you have to send your plans to Richmond. Well, that could take up to 6 months. Then you get comments, then that could take up another 6 months after that to finally get it, hopefully, approved thereafter. You're talking about almost a year. So what I'm trying to work with the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional on is, let's share this person. So Clark, Page, Shenandoah, Front Royal, Berryville, all those places, let's try to find an individual that meets that ability to be an assigned MS4, hire that individual, we'll plant that person in Northern Shenandoah Valley. They can work there and they can review plans accordingly, and then everybody kind of splits the salary of that individual. So that's where I'm kind of going with this, is trying to find creative ways to help these people with the grant writing. It's kind of the same avenue with the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bill. Anthony,
Yep.
You probably have some stories on the other side of where you maybe had some success with things.
So I think the main thing is as we've all talked about here today, when you're writing your grants, you have to be able to tell your story. It has to be something that they can understand what they're buying into and what their funds are going to be used for. I'll never forget, I was with Blue Ridge Hospice, and another nonprofit was on one of the committee meetings for the United Way grant, and they were excited about what they were doing and the PowerPoint that they were going to present. And I just said, well, run it by me and let me review it with you before you do it. Not that I was trying to get tips or anything, but once I did it, I said, you're not telling your story. You're not getting across to them what it is you're asking for and where the funds are going to be used. So that's the main thing when we're writing grants, is you've got to have your numbers. You've got to have figures. We've been very blessed to be able to write grants and be able to get them and win them. But then you have to make sure that you follow up and you're following their guidelines and doing the protocol that they're requiring per quarter in order to keep your funds coming. So it's kind of a catch-22, and he's right. Maybe it's a thing these nonprofits could look at. We partner together and have someone help us out, and we all do it as a community. But it can be tricky, as you know, Richard. It's one of those things. As I said, you just got to be able to have your facts and figures together and tell a story that's going to pull their heartstrings. Well,
that's another reason for, again, with the Nonprofit Alliance here, I mean, we can help make the connection for you too, if you need be, in terms of that help and so forth. So I think that's another thing here. Any other follow-up to this question? This is the last question that I have. And so if there's no other follow-up, I will ask Dave, do we have any Q&A, any questions that maybe people might have follow-up with here?
I don't see anything in the Q&A unless you see something in the chat.
Okay, I don't see. Let's just double check the chat here. Let's see what we've got in here. There's been a lot of great advice, I can tell you that. I'm looking through the comments on here, and Cynthia, Kim, everybody has really provided some great resource type information and stuff here too. So again, I don't see any additional questions or anything. So obviously the panel answered every single question. that people could want to know about you guys. So I think that's great. So let me see if I've got, oops, it says I got a couple more messages here. So, okay. Cynthia is talking about, let me see here, be on the lookout for the Top of Virginia upcoming website edition advocacy toolkit. Okay, we've got that going. And they do have a new director of legislative affairs. So there's another resource here too for the nonprofits. Through the chamber, they've added a director for legislative affairs. So if you don't get a chance, you might stop by the chamber and to get acquainted with this person to be able to help out with some of the issues you might have. I know there's a lot of nonprofits that are members of the chamber. And so I know that would be a great resource for people here too. So let me see if I had any other questions or anything in here. No. Okay, Kim had information here about to remember that the Virginia is a Dillon rule state. And I'm sure that you legislative people know about that. Bill, maybe you can give us a little highlight about the Dillon rule.
Yeah, so basically, all laws are written in Richmond, and then they pass down to localities for those localities to abide by in layman's terms. So that being said, if municipality wants to kind of change how the law is implemented or the ordinance is written or whatever it may be under that law, then they need to go back through their state legislator to try to amend it accordingly so that they can benefit from it accordingly.
Okay. So there's a point of information for some of you if you want to go back and do that. Of course, Kim had also made a comment here, and I think it behooves us also to, we as a, there's a number, and she brings up a good point. There's really, why can't more of our nonprofits just, let's get together and work together on things? I mean, it's just, that's the message I think we're hearing from the legislative side, but let's do it from the nonprofit side and get more involved, and we could be a greater force. I'm going to just do one personal thing here. Bill, and you remember, because you and I had a discussion about this, the I-81 transportation funding program. We created a chamber alliance along the 81, and we were able to talk to our legislative people. And I think hopefully that was some part in the additional funding that we did here for 81 that eventually has come down. And we know we need a lot more effort. But Bill was very helpful and working with us on that. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If there is nothing more at this point, I do have some last minute stuff here. But before I do that, I want to really say my thanks and appreciation, and all of us here at the Nonprofit Alliance and this Symposium for the sponsorship of the Community Foundation. Larry Weiss and the group has been very helpful with getting this process going. Shenandoah University, they've been a great help here too. First Bank, they've really contributed a lot to what we've done here. As you know, at 4:00, we are going to have an in-person wine and cheese event over at the Shenandoah Valley Discovery Museum at 4:00. Hopefully a lot of you can make it there. And then also, I'd like to thank Snowflake, who's done a lot of helpful IT type and consulting stuff for us here on things. And of course, I can't leave out our great moderator, assistant, IT guy, person, everything to help set everything up here, which is Dr. Dave and his leadership with help putting this event on today. We couldn't do it without him. So again, Dave, thank you very much for what you've done for us here. And I will basically sign off. And again, thank you. The wine and cheese event, you might check. I don't know if there's a message on the chat or something like that, whether it's going to be inside or outside. That's at 19 West Cork Street in Winchester at 4 o'clock. So if it'd be great to see everyone over there and be able to have a little wine and cheese over there. That'd be great. So again, thank everyone for your participation on the panel. And hopefully we're talking to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.